Excuse me, but people like you don't belong in first class. This is for paying customers only. The flight attendant's condescending smile widened as she blocked the aisle completely. Dr. Amara Washington stood frozen in the narrow aisle of Delta Flight 1847. Her boarding pass clearly showed seat 2A, first class, the same seat where a white passenger now sat comfortably, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. Around them, other passengers lifted their phones. The modern reflex. Document everything. Share everything. Judge everything. The flight attendant's name tag read Jessica. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. Her voice carried that particular tone, polite enough for corporate policy, dismissive enough to make the message clear. Amara's fingers tightened around her leather briefcase. 20 years of practicing law had taught her to recognize moments that change everything. This felt like one of them. Have you ever watched someone's entire world crumble because they underestimated the wrong person? The words hung in the recycled cabin air like poison. Jessica Mills, according to her name tag, crossed her arms and tilted her head with theatrical patience, the kind reserved for difficult children. "I'm sorry, but are you sure you can read your ticket correctly?" Jessica's voice carried just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. She emphasized each word as if speaking to someone mentally impaired. Behind Jessica, the white passenger in seat 2A, Brad Morrison, mid-40s, navy blazer, smirked openly. He adjusted his position, spreading his belongings across both armrests with deliberate ownership. "Flight departure in 47 minutes, the intercom announced. "Boarding will be complete in 12 minutes. Amara pulled out her boarding pass slowly. The Delta app confirmation glowed on her phone screen. Seat 2A, first class, paid upgrade. She held both devices toward Jessica with steady hands. Jessica barely glanced at them. "Oh, honey, these upgrade mistakes happen all the time. Someone probably used your miles without permission." Her laugh was sharp, performative. You wouldn't believe how often people try to sneak into first class. 3 rows back, Tyler Chen, 22, economics major at NYU, lifted his phone. His thumb hovered over Instagram Live. Something about this felt wrong, felt important. "Y'all need to see this," he whispered to his phone camera, pressing record. "This is happening right now on Delta Flight 1847. This is insane." The viewer count started small. 12, 26, 47. "Ma'am," Jessica continued, her voice growing bolder, "I need you to return to your assigned seat in economy. You're holding up our departure." Brad Morrison finally spoke. "Just take your real seat back there. Some of us actually paid for first class." His tone carried the casual cruelty of someone accustomed to being heard. Amara's grip tightened on her briefcase handle. Inside, legal documents rustled. Contracts, briefs, correspondence that would mean nothing to these people. Yet. "I understand your confusion," Amara said quietly. "Let me just make a quick call to clarify this situation." Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. "Reminder, board meeting moved to 3 p.m. Senator Williams confirmed for 2:30. Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. "Calling won't change your seat assignment, sweetie. Economy is toward the back of the plane." Tyler's live stream hit 156 viewers. Comments flooded in real time. "This is disgusting. Where is this happening? Call her manager now. Delta needs to see this." A middle-aged woman in 3B leaned forward. "Excuse me, but I saw her board with first-class passengers. Her ticket looked legitimate." Jessica's smile turned predatory. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm trained to handle these situations. Some people always—" She paused, letting the implication hang. "They always think rules don't apply to them." The gate agent appeared at the aircraft door. Marcus Rivera, 28, 5 years with Delta. Jessica waved him over with authority. "Marcus, we have a passenger issue. This woman is claiming someone else's seat." Jessica gestured toward Amara like evidence in a trial. Marcus looked between the boarding pass and the seat assignment chart on his tablet. His brow furrowed. "Ma'am, your boarding pass shows 2A, but our system shows Mr. Morrison checked in for that seat this morning." Brad held up his phone. See? Mobile check-in. Been confirmed since 6 a.m. Tyler's live stream exploded. 300 viewers, 500. Comments scrolling too fast to read. Amara opened her briefcase slightly, retrieving a business card holder. The motion was casual, practiced. The leather case bore embossed letters. Washington and Associates, Legal Counsel. "Gentlemen," she said softly, "I think there may be a system error. Perhaps we should involve your supervisor." Marcus radioed gate operations. "We need an assistant manager at gate A12, passenger seating dispute." Jessica's confidence grew with each minute. "You know what? I'm going to have to ask you to deplane if you continue to disrupt our boarding process." Behind them, more passengers pulled out phones. The universal response to conflict in 2024. Document. Share. Judge. Tyler hit 1,000 viewers. His hands shook slightly as comments poured in. "This is racial profiling. Someone needs to help her. This is why I don't fly Delta." "Where are the managers?" A security officer appeared at the gate. Janet Brooks, 10-year TSA veteran, hand resting casually on her radio. The situation was escalating beyond cabin crew authority. "Ma'am," Officer Brooks said to Amara, "I'm going to need you to step aside so we can resolve this calmly." Amara's phone buzzed again. This time a calendar reminder. Delta Airlines board meeting, Washington and Associates conference room, 3:00 p.m. She glanced at the notification, then at the growing crowd of passengers recording everything. 22 years of legal practice had taught her patience, timing, the difference between reacting and responding. "Of course, Officer Brooks," Amara said. "But before we proceed, may I ask, are you familiar with Delta's passenger rights policy regarding confirmed seat assignments?" The question hung in the air. Simple, precise, legal. Tyler's viewer count hit 1,247. The live stream was spreading beyond his followers now, strangers sharing, commenting, creating digital witnesses to whatever was about to unfold at 30,000 feet. Officer Brooks hesitated. The question about passenger rights policy wasn't what she'd expected from someone supposedly trying to steal a seat. She glanced at Marcus, who was already pulling up Delta's internal guidelines on his tablet. "Flight departure in 31 minutes, the intercom crackled. "Final boarding call for Delta Flight 1847. Derek Walsh emerged from the jet bridge, assistant manager, customer relations, 15 years climbing Delta's corporate ladder. His appearance drew murmurs from gathering passengers. This was escalating beyond routine. "What seems to be the issue here?" Derek's voice carried practiced authority, but his eyes were already assessing the phones pointed in his direction. Jessica straightened, seizing her moment. "Mr. Walsh, this passenger is refusing to move to her correct seat in economy. She's become increasingly agitated and is now questioning our policies." Tyler's live stream hit 2,134 viewers. Comments exploded. "Derek needs to fix this. This woman has first-class ticket. Why is Delta allowing this? Someone call corporate now." Derek examined Amara's boarding pass, then Brad's mobile confirmation. His frown deepened as he cross-referenced the seat assignment system. "I see the confusion," Derek said slowly. "But Mr. Morrison's check-in was processed first this morning. In cases of system conflicts, we honor the earliest confirmed reservation." The lie came smoothly, practiced, corporate. Amara's phone buzzed. Another text from her assistant. "Senator Williams' office called, running 15 minutes early for your 2:30. She glanced at the message, then at Derek. "I appreciate your position, Mr. Walsh. However, I believe there may be some misunderstanding about the boarding process. May I show you something?" Before Derek could respond, Brad Morrison stood up from seat 2A, puffing his chest. "Look, lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but I paid good money for this seat. Just take your economy seat and stop making a scene." His voice carried the entitled aggression of someone who'd never been told no. Several passengers gasped at his tone. Tyler adjusted his phone angle, making sure Brad's face was clearly visible. "Y'all hearing this? This is exactly what's wrong with—" "Sir," Officer Brooks interrupted Tyler, "I need to ask you to stop recording and move along. I'm a passenger on this flight. Tyler replied evenly. I have the right to document what I'm witnessing. The standoff multiplied. Passenger versus passenger. Authority versus rights. Documentation versus control. A woman in row 4 spoke up, Sarah Kim, investigative journalist for the Atlanta Constitution. She'd been watching quietly, phone recording discreetly. Excuse me, but I'm a reporter. This appears to be a clear case of discriminatory seating practices. Derek's face paled slightly. Media attention was the last thing Delta needed, especially with the Southwest merger pending shareholder approval. Ma'am, this is simply a seating mix-up, Derek said to Sarah. We handle these situations routinely. By removing a passenger with a confirmed first-class ticket while allowing another passenger to remain in that same seat? Sarah's question cut through the corporate speak like a blade. Tyler's live stream peaked at 3,847 viewers. Someone had shared it on Twitter. TikTok. The digital wildfire was spreading beyond his control. Screenshots were already circulating on Facebook. Hashtag Delta discrimination began trending in Atlanta, New York, and Los Angeles simultaneously. An elderly black woman in seat 5C stood up slowly. I've been flying for 40 years, she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades. I've seen this before. This is wrong. Her statement rippled through the cabin. Other passengers began murmuring agreement. A Hispanic man in 6A nodded firmly. A white woman in 3B shook her head in disgust. Jessica, emboldened by management support, stepped closer to Amara. Ma'am, you need to understand something. Some people try to take advantage of situations like this, thinking they can what? Amara's voice remained calm, but something shifted in her posture. 22 years of courtroom experience, recognizing the moment when patience transitions to strategy. You know exactly what I mean, Jessica replied, her smile turning vicious. People like you always play the race card when you don't get your way. The words hit like a physical blow. Passengers in nearby seats gasped audibly. Several people raised their phones higher, ensuring clear audio. The elderly woman in 5C shook her head sadly, as if she'd heard those exact words before. Tyler's comments section exploded. Did she just say that? This is insane. Someone screen record this now. Delta is about to get sued. That flight attendant needs to be fired. More passengers joined Tyler's live stream from their own phones. Multiple angles, multiple perspectives. The incident was being documented from every conceivable viewpoint. A teenager in row 7 started her own TikTok live. A businessman in 2B began recording on LinkedIn Live. The situation was beyond containment now. Captain Thompson emerged from the cockpit. 30-year veteran, close to retirement, just wanting a smooth flight to Atlanta. The commotion had reached the flight deck through crew communications. What's the situation, Derek? Captain Thompson asked, surveying the crowd of passengers, phones, and growing tension. Captain, we have a passenger refusing to move to her assigned seat. She's becoming disruptive and affecting our departure schedule. Derek's summary omitted crucial details. The confirmed first-class ticket, Jessica's inflammatory comments, the multiple witnesses recording everything. Amara opened her briefcase slightly, revealing organized legal folders with official seals and letterheads. She pulled out her business card. Simple, elegant, devastating. Dr. Amara Washington, Senior Partner, Washington and Associates. She handed the card to Captain Thompson. Captain, I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding. Perhaps we should resolve this before it escalates further. Captain Thompson read the card, his expression shifting subtly. Washington and Associates was a name he recognized from aviation law journals. Big cases, corporate clients, the kind of firm that made headlines when airlines screwed up. Dr. Washington, he said carefully, let me see your boarding documentation. Brad Morrison scoffed loudly from his stolen seat. Oh, great, now she's playing the lawyer card, too. What's next? Claiming she owns the airline? His sarcastic comment drew uncomfortable laughter from a few passengers, but most remained silent, sensing the growing gravity of the situation. As Amara reached for her phone to show additional documentation, Officer Brooks stepped forward with zip-tie restraints visible on her belt. The visual was unmistakable. The threat of physical removal hung in the air like storm clouds. Captain, Derek interjected quickly, our crew has already assessed the situation. We need to maintain our departure schedule. Ground operations is asking about our delay. Tyler's live stream hit 4,200 viewers. The viewer count was climbing exponentially as shares multiplied across platforms. College students, working mothers, retirees, people from every demographic watching this unfold in real time. Sarah Kim stepped forward, press credentials now visible on a lanyard around her neck. Captain Thompson, I'm Sarah Kim with the Atlanta Constitution. Are you authorizing the removal of a passenger with confirmed first-class seating while allowing another passenger to occupy that same seat? The question hung in the recycled air like an indictment. Every phone camera focused on Captain Thompson's face, waiting for an answer that would define careers, lawsuits, and corporate reputations. Behind Sarah, other passengers began speaking up. This is discrimination. Let her sit in her paid seat. Why is this even a question? The crowd dynamics were shifting. What started as curious observation was becoming collective outrage. Amara's phone buzzed again, this time a call. The caller ID showed clearly on her screen. Charles Morrison, Delta CEO office. She declined the call, letting it go to voicemail, but not before several passengers, and Tyler's live stream, caught a glimpse of the name. Comments flooded in asking who Charles Morrison was and why the CEO would be calling her. Dr. Washington, Captain Thompson said slowly, perhaps we should discuss this privately in the boarding area. Actually, Captain, Amara replied, her voice carrying a new edge. I think transparency might be more appropriate at this point. These passengers deserve to see how Delta Airlines resolves conflicts involving confirmed reservations and discriminatory treatment. Officer Brooks stepped closer, hand moving toward her restraints. The crowd tensed visibly. Phones rose higher. Tyler's viewer count climbed past 5,000. Other live streams were approaching 1,000 viewers each. A gate agent from the adjacent gate had walked over, drawn by the commotion. Passengers from other flights were craning their necks to see what was happening. The incident was spreading beyond Flight 1947. Derek whispered urgently into his radio. Operations, we have a significant passenger situation at Gate A12. Media is present, requesting immediate supervisor support. The response crackled back. Derek, legal is asking about the nature of the incident. Are we talking about a removal situation? In that moment, surrounded by security, management, cameras, and hundreds of digital witnesses, Dr. Amara Washington made a decision that would change everything. She smiled. Not the polite smile of someone accepting defeat. Not the nervous smile of someone hoping for mercy. The confident smile of someone who had been underestimated their entire career and never tired of proving people wrong. Amara's smile held secrets. 22 years of legal practice had taught her the power of patience, timing, and the precise moment when silence becomes more devastating than words. She opened her briefcase fully for the first time. Inside, organized with military precision, sat documents that would make corporate executives lose sleep. Legal folders marked confidential, court filings with federal seals, and one particular folder that made Captain Thompson's eyes widen when he glimpsed the header. Delta Airlines, merger documentation, Washington and Associates. Captain Thompson, Amara said quietly, pulling out a single document. Before Officer Brooks proceeds with whatever she's planning, perhaps you should know exactly who you're dealing with. The document was thick, official, bearing multiple signatures and corporate seals. Sarah Kim leaned closer, her journalistic instincts recognizing the gravity of whatever was about to unfold. Tyler's live stream hit 6,847 viewers. Comments were flooding faster than anyone could read. What is that document? This is getting insane. She's pulling out receipts. Delta is about to get destroyed. Amara held up the document so Captain Thompson could read the letterhead clearly. Shareholder Voting Proxy, Delta Airlines, Inc., Southwest Merger Approval. Dr. Washington, Captain Thompson said slowly, his voice changing completely. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, there's definitely been a misunderstanding. Amara interrupted gently. You see, Captain, Washington and Associates represents several institutional investors with significant Delta holdings. We currently manage proxy votes representing approximately 12% of Delta's outstanding shares. Derek Walsh's face drained of color. 12% wasn't just significant, it was massive. In a merger requiring 67% shareholder approval, that kind of voting bloc could make or break billion-dollar deals. Brad Morrison was still oblivious, scrolling through his phone in the stolen seat. Are we going to sit here all day listening to this woman's fantasies? I have a connecting flight in Atlanta. Jessica stood frozen, her earlier confidence evaporating as she began to understand the magnitude of her mistake. Amara pulled out a second document. This is more interesting. A legal brief we've been preparing for the past 6 months. Discriminatory practices in commercial aviation. A class action analysis. She opened the brief to a page marked with yellow tabs. We've been documenting incidents exactly like this one across major airlines. Patterns of discrimination, statistical disparities in passenger treatment, corporate liability assessments. Sarah Kim's eyes lit up. This wasn't just a seating dispute anymore. This was a story that could expose systemic problems across the entire airline industry. Dr. Washington, Sarah said, are you saying Delta has a documented pattern of discriminatory behavior? I'm saying, Amara replied, that incidents like this rarely happen in isolation. They're usually symptoms of deeper cultural problems within organizations. Tyler adjusted his phone to capture the documents better. His viewer count was approaching 8,000. People were screen recording everything, ensuring permanent digital evidence of every word. Officer Brooks looked uncertain for the first time. Her hand moved away from the restraints. Whatever this was, it was above her pay grade. Derek whispered urgently into his radio. Operations, I need immediate legal counsel at Gate A12. We have a complex situation developing. The response was terse. Derek, legal wants to know if we're talking about Dr. Amara Washington from Washington and Associates. Derek's eyes widened. How did they... Yes, that's exactly who we're talking about. Stand by. Do not escalate further. Repeat. Do not escalate. Amara's phone buzzed again. The same caller ID. Charles Morrison, Delta CEO office. This time, she answered. Charles, I was wondering when you'd call. Her voice carried the familiarity of someone who knew the CEO personally. Tyler's comments exploded. She knows the CEO? First name basis. This woman is connected. Delta is screwed. The conversation was brief, quiet, but everyone could see Amara's expression shift from patient to businesslike. I understand, Charles. Yes, I'm on flight 1947. No, I don't think this can wait until the board meeting. She paused, listening. Actually, I think your crew might benefit from witnessing this conversation. She put the phone on speaker. Dr. Washington, this is Charles Morrison, CEO of Delta Airlines. I've just been briefed on the situation at Gate A12. On behalf of Delta, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience you've experienced. The gate area fell silent. Even Brad Morrison looked up from his phone, finally sensing that something significant was happening. Charles, Amara replied calmly, inconvenience is a mild term for what I've experienced. Your flight attendant informed me that people like me don't belong in first class. Your assistant manager supported discriminatory seating practices. Your security officer was preparing to physically restrain me for occupying my confirmed seat. Each word hit like a legal brief. Precise, documented, devastating. Furthermore, Amara continued, this entire incident has been live-streamed to thousands of viewers and documented by multiple passengers, including a journalist from the Atlanta Constitution. Charles Morrison's voice was strained. Dr. Washington, I assure you this doesn't represent Delta's values. Charles, let me stop you there. Amara's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to billion-dollar negotiations. This afternoon, Washington and Associates is scheduled to deliver our recommendation on the Southwest merger to our clients. As you know, we represent the proxy votes that could determine whether this merger succeeds or fails. The silence was deafening. Everyone present, passengers, crew, security, understood they were witnessing something far beyond a seating dispute. Tyler's live stream had broken 10,000 viewers. Other passengers were sharing clips on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. The incident was going viral in real time. What's your current approval percentage sitting at, Charles? Last I heard you needed 67% and were hovering around 64%. Amara's question was rhetorical. She knew the numbers better than most Delta executives. Brad Morrison finally spoke up, his voice uncertain for the first time. Wait, who exactly are you? Amara turned to face him directly. Mr. Morrison, I'm Dr. Amara Washington, senior partner at Washington & Associates. We specialize in corporate law, with particular expertise in aviation industry mergers and acquisitions. She paused, pulling out another document. Interestingly, your last name is Morrison. Any relation to Charles Morrison, Delta's CEO? Brad's face went white. He's my older brother. The revelation hit the gate area like a physical force. Tyler's comment section went absolutely insane. The CEO's brother stole her seat. This is insane. Family connections exposed. Nepotism and racism. Sarah Kim was frantically taking notes, her journalistic instincts recognizing a story that would make front-page headlines. How fascinating, Amara said quietly. So the CEO's brother felt entitled to take my confirmed first-class seat, and your crew supported him without question. Charles Morrison's voice crackled through the phone speaker. Dr. Washington, I had no idea my brother was involved in this situation. Charles, your brother just told thousands of live stream viewers that I should take my real seat back there, because some of us actually paid for first class. Your flight attendant told me people like me don't belong in first class. Your assistant manager fabricated policy to support discriminatory practices. Each statement built like a legal case. Evidence, witnesses, digital documentation. And now, Amara continued, I have a decision to make. In 2 hours, I'm scheduled to advise our clients on their merger vote. Currently, we're recommending approval. But corporations that demonstrate systemic discrimination present significant legal liability risks for investors. The threat was elegant in its simplicity. No shouting, no demands, just business consequences explained with surgical precision. Derek Walsh looked like he might faint. Jessica's hands trembled as the full scope of her mistake became clear. Captain Thompson stepped forward. Dr. Washington, what can we do to resolve this situation appropriately? Amara smiled again, the same confident smile that had started this revelation. Captain, I think it's time for some people to learn about consequences. Real consequences, the kind that create lasting change rather than temporary apologies. She pulled out one final document from her briefcase. This one bore the seal of the Federal Aviation Administration and the Department of Transportation. You see, gentlemen, Washington & Associates doesn't just represent investors. We also serve as legal counsel for the Federal Aviation Administration's Civil Rights Office. We've been asked to investigate discrimination complaints across major airlines. The gate area fell completely silent. Even Tyler stopped reading comments, his phone focused entirely on Amara's next words. This incident, documented by multiple witnesses and broadcast live to thousands of viewers, represents exactly the kind of systemic discrimination the FAA is concerned about. She looked directly at Jessica, then Derek, then Brad Morrison. And now, thanks to your actions, I have a perfect case study to present to federal regulators. The smile that followed wasn't vindictive. It was the satisfied expression of someone who had just won a case before the jury even deliberated. Tyler's viewer count hit 12,847. The incident was no longer just viral. It was a digital phenomenon that would be analyzed, discussed, and remembered for years. Charles Morrison's voice was barely audible through the phone speaker. Dr. Washington, what do you need from us? Amara's response would determine not just the fate of everyone present, but potentially the future of discrimination policies across the entire airline industry. The conference call had transformed Gate A12 into an impromptu corporate tribunal. Charles Morrison's voice carried the desperation of a CEO watching billions of dollars hang in the balance. Dr. Washington, Senator Williams, let me be absolutely clear. Delta Airlines does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. This incident will be thoroughly investigated and appropriate actions will be taken. Charles? Amara replied, her voice carrying the precision of someone who had dismantled corporate doublespeak for 2 decades. Let's discuss specifics rather than generalities. I have documented evidence of systemic discrimination patterns. What I need to see are concrete actions, not promises. Tyler's live stream had stabilized at 16,847 viewers. Major news outlets were now picking up the story. CNN's breaking news ticker had started running. Live. Civil rights attorney confronts airline discrimination on viral stream. Senator Williams' voice cut through the tension. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to be very direct. Dr. Washington was scheduled to testify before my subcommittee next week about airline discrimination patterns. This incident has just provided us with a real-time case study. The revelation sent shockwaves through everyone present. Amara wasn't just any passenger. She was a congressional witness, scheduled to testify about the exact problem she had just experienced. Furthermore, Senator Williams continued, this live stream now serves as evidence for federal oversight hearings. Mr. Morrison, your company's response in the next few minutes will determine whether we're talking about internal policy changes or federal legislation. Charles Morrison's silence spoke volumes. In corporate America, federal legislation was the nuclear option. Expensive, permanent, and impossible to control. Derek Walsh stepped forward, sweat visible on his forehead. Mr. Morrison, sir, perhaps I should explain the crew's perspective. Mr. Walsh, Robert Chen interrupted. As TSA legal counsel, I need to advise you that anything you say right now is being recorded by multiple parties and may be used in federal proceedings. The legal warning silenced Derek immediately. Jessica Mills stood frozen, realizing that her casual racism had escalated into a federal case with congressional oversight. Amara opened another folder from her briefcase. Charles, let me share some numbers that might focus this conversation. The Southwest merger is valued at $26.7 billion. Current shareholder approval sits at 64.2%. You need 67% for approval. She held up a document marked Institutional Investor Analysis. Washington and Associates represents proxy votes for 11.8% of Delta's outstanding shares. Additionally, our clients control another 8.3% through subsidiary holdings. The math was devastating. Amara controlled roughly 20% of the votes needed for merger approval. If she recommended against the merger, it would fail catastrophically. More importantly, Amara continued, our clients include 3 major pension funds, 2 university endowments, and the Teachers' Retirement System of California. These institutions have strict policies about investing in companies with documented discrimination problems. Tyler's comments section exploded as viewers began to understand the financial implications. She controls the merger. Billions of dollars at stake. Delta stock is going to crash. This woman has serious power. Sarah Kim was live streaming her own coverage now, providing journalistic context. This isn't just about one seat anymore. We're watching a real-time corporate accountability session that could reshape airline industry practices. Brad Morrison finally spoke from his stolen seat, his voice small and uncertain. Charles, I think maybe I should just move to another seat. Mr. Morrison, Senator Williams' voice was ice cold. I think you should remain exactly where you are until this situation is resolved. Your actions are now part of a federal record. The senator's words carried the weight of congressional authority. Brad was no longer just a passenger. He was evidence in a discrimination case. Charles Morrison's voice returned, strained but attempting corporate authority. Dr. Washington, what specific actions would you consider appropriate resolution? I'm glad you asked, Charles. Amara's tone shifted to pure business. First, immediate termination of all personnel who participated in or enabled discriminatory actions. That includes Ms. Mills and Mr. Walsh. Jessica gasped audibly. Derek's face went white. Second, your brother Brad is permanently banned from all Delta flights. Discrimination enablement should have consequences, regardless of family connections. Brad started to protest, but Robert Chen's legal glare silenced him. Third, Amara continued, Delta implements the Washington Protocol, a real-time discrimination reporting system with direct corporate accountability. Any discrimination complaint triggers immediate C-suite notification and 24-hour resolution requirements. Tyler adjusted his phone to capture the documents better. His uncle Robert was taking notes, recognizing the legal precision of Amara's demands. Fourth, Delta establishes a $50 million passenger rights fund, administered by an independent third party, to provide immediate compensation for discrimination victims. The number sent shockwaves through the conversation. $50 million represented serious corporate commitment, not symbolic gestures. Fifth, mandatory unconscious bias training for all customer-facing personnel, conducted by Washington and Associates at Delta's expense. Senator Williams's approval was audible. Dr. Washington, these seem like reasonable accountability measures. Mr. Morrison, what's Delta's response? The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Everyone present understood they were witnessing a corporate calculation, the cost of compliance versus the cost of resistance. Finally, Amara said, delivering her ultimatum, Delta publicly acknowledges systemic discrimination problems and commits to federal oversight monitoring for the next 5 years. May. The demand was surgical in its precision. Public acknowledgement would trigger shareholder lawsuits, regulatory scrutiny, and competitive disadvantage. But refusing would kill the merger and destroy billions in shareholder value. Charles Morrison's voice was barely recognizable. Dr. Washington, these demands would cost Delta hundreds of millions of dollars and years of regulatory oversight. Charles, Amara replied calmly, discrimination has always been expensive. The question is whether you pay the cost of accountability or the cost of continued lawlessness. She held up one final document, a merger recommendation letter on Washington and Associates letterhead. I have 2 letters prepared for our clients. One recommends approval of the Southwest merger, citing Delta's commitment to civil rights reform. The other recommends rejection, citing systemic discrimination and leadership failure. Tyler's viewer count had reached 18,233. Major news networks were now covering the story live. Social media was exploding with hashtags. Hashtag Delta discrimination, #corporate accountability, #Washington Protocol. Charles, you have 60 seconds to decide which letter gets sent to our clients. The countdown began, not just for Charles Morrison, but for an entire corporate culture that had operated on assumptions about power, privilege, and accountability. Jessica Mills broke down crying, realizing her career was over. Derek Walsh stared at his shoes, calculating unemployment benefits. Brad Morrison sat frozen in the stolen seat that had cost his family billions. Tyler continued live streaming, his uncle Robert providing legal commentary for viewers who were witnessing corporate justice in real time. Senator Williams waited silently, knowing that whatever happened next would influence federal legislation affecting millions of airline passengers. Captain Thompson stood paralyzed, understanding that his airline's future hung on the next words from his CEO. And Dr. Amara Washington sat calmly in the economy seat she'd been forced to accept, holding the power to destroy or transform one of America's largest airlines. 30 seconds, Charles. The gate area fell completely silent except for the hum of phones recording history. In that silence, the true cost of the situation became clear. Tyler's uncle Robert whispered calculations to Sarah Kim. If the merger fails, Delta stock will lose approximately 23% of its value within 48 hours. That's roughly $8.2 billion in shareholder losses. Other passengers began understanding the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just about discrimination. It was about corporate power structures, federal oversight, and the real cost of systemic racism. 15 seconds, Charles. A new voice crackled through the phone, clearly someone who had just entered Charles Morrison's office. Sir, legal is advising immediate compliance. Stock is already down 3% on social media rumors. We're getting calls from institutional investors. The financial pressure was mounting in real time. Tyler's live stream had become a stock market influencer, with traders watching to see how Delta would respond. 10 seconds. Jessica Mills collapsed into a nearby chair, sobbing openly. Derek Walsh pulled out his phone, presumably calling his wife to explain why he'd be coming home unemployed. Brad Morrison finally stood up from seat 2A, his voice barely audible. "Dr. Washington, I'm sorry, I had no idea." "Mr. Morrison," Amara replied without looking at him, "ignorance isn't an excuse for entitlement. Your apology is 20 years too late and directed at the wrong person." 5 seconds, Charles. Charles Morrison's voice cracked through the phone. "Dr. Washington, Delta Airlines accepts your terms. All of them. We'll begin implementation immediately." The gate area erupted. Tyler's comments section exploded with celebration. Sarah Kim was already typing her breaking news article. Robert Chen nodded approvingly at his nephew's documentation of corporate justice, but Amara wasn't finished. "Charles, acceptance isn't enough. I need specific timelines and accountability measures." She pulled out a legal document she'd prepared, somehow anticipating this exact scenario. "Ms. Mills and Mr. Walsh will be terminated within the hour. Your brother Brad will receive his ban notification before this flight departs. The Washington Protocol will be operational within 72 hours. The $50 million fund will be established within 30 days, with first payments going to documented discrimination victims within 60 days. Federal oversight monitoring begins immediately." Each demand came with precise timelines, leaving no room for corporate delay tactics. "Furthermore," Amara continued, "I want Captain Thompson to personally escort me to seat 2A, my confirmed seat, and announce to all passengers that Delta apologizes for the discrimination they witnessed." The symbolic victory was as important as the systemic changes. Every passenger who had watched the humiliation would also witness the accountability. Captain Thompson stepped forward immediately. "Dr. Washington, it would be my honor to escort you to your correct seat." As they walked toward first class, Tyler followed with his phone, documenting the moment when justice looked like a simple walk down an airplane aisle. The elderly woman in 5C smiled proudly. "That's how you handle that," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Other passengers applauded, not just for Amara, but for witnessing proof that power could be held accountable when people refused to accept injustice. Senator Williams's voice carried satisfaction. "Dr. Washington, this has been educational. I look forward to your testimony next week." "Senator, I think I'll have some excellent case study material to present." Tyler's final viewer count, 19,847 people had witnessed corporate accountability happen in real time. The hashtag Washington Protocol was already trending globally. 72 hours later, the airline industry had fundamentally changed. Jessica Mills received her termination letter via certified mail, while Tyler's original live stream surpassed 2.3 million views across all platforms. Her final paycheck included a notation: "Terminated for violation of company anti-discrimination policies." Derek Walsh cleaned out his office under security escort, his 15-year career ending with a one-paragraph dismissal letter. His LinkedIn profile, once boasting Customer Excellence Manager, now sat empty and unemployed. Brad Morrison's permanent ban notification arrived via legal courier. The document was thorough, banning him not just from Delta flights, but from all Delta facilities, events, and partner airline connections. His brother's executive privileges couldn't override federal discrimination consequences. But the real transformation was systemic. Within 48 hours, Delta launched the Washington Protocol, a revolutionary reporting system that Tyler's uncle Robert described as the most comprehensive anti-discrimination technology in aviation history. Every Delta employee received a smartphone app with direct reporting capability. Any discrimination complaint triggered automatic alerts to C-suite executives, legal counsel, and federal oversight monitors simultaneously. The system included real-time video recording, automatic witness identification, and 24-hour resolution requirements with financial penalties for delays. Dr. Amara Washington personally oversaw the implementation from her law firm's Atlanta office, where she'd established the new Passenger Rights Division. Her staff of 12 attorneys specialized exclusively in airline discrimination cases. The $50 million Passenger Rights Fund processed its first claims within 30 days. Maria Rodriguez, a Hispanic mother who'd been removed from a Delta flight 6 months earlier, received $75,000 in compensation and a personal apology from Charles Morrison. James Williams, an elderly black veteran who'd been denied first-class seating despite his military disability status, received $125,000 and lifetime Delta premium status. Within 60 days, 347 documented cases received settlements totaling $16.8 million. The fund wasn't just symbolic. It was transformative financial justice for victims of systemic discrimination. The mandatory unconscious bias training program conducted by Washington and Associates became the gold standard across the aviation industry. United Airlines voluntarily adopted similar protocols. American Airlines requested consultation services. Southwest Airlines, ironically Delta's merger partner, implemented identical policies before the merger completion, recognizing that discrimination liability could destroy billion-dollar deals overnight. Captain Thompson received a commendation for his professional handling of the situation. His decision to support Dr. Washington's demands rather than defend discriminatory crew actions became a Harvard Business School case study in ethical leadership under pressure. Tyler Chen became an unexpected advocate for passenger rights. His uncle Robert helped him establish a nonprofit organization using revenue from his viral livestream. The Digital Witness Foundation provided legal support for discrimination victims and trained people to document incidents effectively. His original Instagram live video was archived by the Smithsonian Institution as a historical document demonstrating how social media could drive corporate accountability and social justice. Senator Williams' congressional hearings resulted in the Passenger Rights Protection Act, federal legislation requiring all airlines to implement real-time discrimination reporting systems, mandatory bias training, and independent victim compensation funds. The legislation passed with bipartisan support after senators watched Tyler's livestream during committee hearings. The visual evidence of discrimination followed by corporate accountability proved more persuasive than years of statistical reports. Sarah Kim's investigative series for the Atlanta Constitution won a Pulitzer Prize for public service. Her articles exposed discrimination patterns across 7 major airlines, triggering federal investigations and billions in settlement payments. Her reporting revealed that the airline industry had systematically underreported discrimination complaints for decades, treating them as isolated customer service issues rather than civil rights violations. Charles Morrison survived as Delta's CEO, but his leadership style changed permanently. He implemented monthly accountability sessions where employees could directly challenge executive decisions. His brother Brad's actions had taught him that leadership meant taking responsibility for systemic problems, not just individual incidents. The Southwest merger completed successfully, but under federal oversight monitoring that continued for 5 years. Every passenger complaint, every seating dispute, every crew interaction was subject to federal review and public transparency requirements. Most importantly, the incident sparked industry-wide cultural transformation. Flight attendants received comprehensive civil rights training. Gate agents learned to recognize and prevent discriminatory practices. Security personnel studied de-escalation techniques that prioritized passenger dignity over corporate authority. Dr. Amara Washington's briefcase, the same one that had contained the documents that changed everything, now sat in her expanded office overlooking Atlanta's skyline. Inside, new cases awaited her attention. Letters from discrimination victims who'd learned that someone would fight for them. Requests for consultation from companies wanting to prevent their own Gate A12 moments. The black stories, real-life stories, and touching stories of passengers who'd experienced dignity and justice because one woman refused to accept discrimination filled an entire filing cabinet. But the most important document remained on her desk, a simple boarding pass for Seat 2A, Flight 1947, framed as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful changes begin with someone refusing to give up their rightfully confirmed seat. 6 months after Flight 1847, the aviation industry measured time differently. Before Washington Protocol, and after Washington Protocol, became standard terminology in corporate boardrooms and federal oversight meetings. Dr. Amara Washington's quiet power had accomplished what decades of complaints, protests, and lawsuits had failed to achieve: immediate, measurable, systemic change that protected millions of passengers. The statistics spoke louder than any speech could. Discrimination complaints across major airlines dropped 78% within the first quarter after protocol implementation. Customer satisfaction scores for minority passengers increased 45%. Employee bias incident reports decreased 82% as training programs addressed unconscious prejudices that had operated unchecked for generations. But the deeper transformation was cultural. Flight attendants approached every passenger interaction knowing they were accountable to real-time monitoring. Gate agents understood that discriminatory decisions triggered immediate corporate and federal consequences. Security personnel learned that passenger dignity was non-negotiable, regardless of race, ethnicity, or perceived social status. Tyler Chen's foundation had trained over 15,000 people in effective discrimination documentation. His workshops taught ordinary passengers how to become extraordinary witnesses for justice. The phrase, "Are you recording this?" had become a powerful deterrent to discriminatory behavior across all industries, not just aviation. Sarah Kim's investigative work expanded beyond airlines into hotels, restaurants, and retail businesses. Her reporting demonstrated that discrimination wasn't industry-specific. It was a systemic problem requiring systematic solutions. The Washington model of immediate accountability, financial consequences, and federal oversight became the template for civil rights enforcement across multiple sectors. The personal cost of discrimination had shifted dramatically. Jessica Mills remained unemployed 6 months later, her termination for discriminatory behavior making her unemployable in customer service roles. Derek Walsh found work at a significantly lower salary. His career advancement permanently stalled. Brad Morrison's ban had cost him lucrative business contracts that required air travel, demonstrating that discrimination consequences extended far beyond immediate incidents. But these weren't stories of revenge. They were stories of accountability. The same accountability that protected future passengers from experiencing the humiliation that Dr. Washington had endured with such grace and strategic brilliance. Charles Morrison's transformation from defensive CEO to accountability advocate had inspired other corporate leaders. His monthly accountability sessions were studied by business schools as examples of how crisis could catalyze genuine organizational change rather than cosmetic policy adjustments. The Washington Protocol had prevented an estimated 1,247 discrimination incidents in its first 6 months of operation. Each prevented incident represented a person who maintained their dignity, a family that didn't experience humiliation, and a society that moved incrementally closer to actual equality rather than theoretical promises. Dr. Washington's legal practice had evolved into something unprecedented, a firm that corporations consulted proactively rather than defensively. Her approach of strategic pressure combined with systematic solutions had proven more effective than traditional litigation alone. The framed boarding pass for Seat 2A remained on her desk, but it was no longer alone. Letters from passengers who'd experienced justice, thank-you notes from employees who'd learned to recognize their own biases, and consultation requests from organizations choosing accountability over denial filled her expanding office. These real-life stories proved that individual courage could create collective change. Black stories of triumph over systemic discrimination inspired people across all communities to refuse acceptance of injustice. Touching stories of ordinary people becoming extraordinary advocates demonstrated that power belonged to those willing to use it responsibly. Have you ever witnessed discrimination? Your voice matters more than you realize. Share your story in the comments below. Document what you see. Support those experiencing injustice. Subscribe for more stories of everyday heroes creating extraordinary change. Hit that notification bell, because injustice anywhere should concern us everywhere. Together, we can ensure that every person's confirmed seat in society is respected and protected.